If you are willing to learn N8N, I think you are at the good place. Hello, I'm Manu. I code since more than 20 years and I'm a specialist now in AI and automation. I decided to create a complete training to teach N8N from scratch. The target is to let total beginner, people with no technical background, being able to build amazing workflows and actually start saving a lot of time. I think N8N is an amazing tool, especially combined with the good AI. It's really impressive what you can achieve with N8N today. And I really want to share my experience of N8N and my more global experience as a software engineer. So this is why I created this training, the Blacksmith training. I give it that name because crafting N8N workflow really feels like forging something. It's really craftsmanship, and I wanted to have this craftsmanship atmosphere in the training. So this is a comprehensive program designed to let you master N8N. In this chapter, which is the second chapter, we will discuss one very important aspect of N8N, which is data management. We will see how the data are flowing in N8N and how to manipulate it through your node. If you missed it, you can already access the first chapter. It will be linked in the description. Also, if you are looking for the full course and a community where you can learn and get help, I invite you to join me and my friend Thijs in the AI Atelier. It's a free community we created on School where we discuss AI, AI automation, video automation, and much more. It's a fluff-free community where we build stuff and share knowledge and help each other. Now, let's start learning N8N. I want to show you how data are navigating in your workflow. The particularity of N8N is that your workflow is manipulating a list of items. So let's see what it does mean with a concrete example. And that is the perfect occasion for me to start using Google Sheet in N8N. You probably know Google Sheet. It's like Excel, but provided by Google. So everybody with a Gmail account can access it. It's completely free and very powerful. And for me, it's one of the best tools in combination with N8N. So we will start by doing a new empty Google Sheet in our Google Drive. We will name it, and we want to use it as a database for our project. So what we will be doing is a very simple newsletter system. So we will want two columns, email and message. The first column contains the email of the recipient, and the second column, the message we want to send him. So let's populate with some data. So I want to send two emails, but of course we could add as many lines as we want. Now back to our N8N workflow, we will add a new node here. We will seek for sheet and get rows in sheet. Here we connect our Google credentials that are connected to the Google Drive. We choose sheet within document, get rows. We have many operations, but we want to get rows. Choose from the list, demo sheet, and the sheet 1. We click on test step, and we see that the Google Sheet node returns to us two items, one per line with the email, the message, and an additional field, row number. In N8N, each node is receiving data as input and is returning data as output. When I'm using the word data, you can understand it as informations. The flow of data across nodes is represented by the lines, the connectors between the node. A connector means that some data are flowing, are traveling between this node and this node. This is a very simple workflow with a trigger node, which allows us to start the workflow, and a get rows in Google Sheet node, which is reading those data from this Google Sheet and returning it. Let's see what happens when we run this workflow. So we will click on Test Workflow, and we see that the workflow becomes green. What I want to highlight here is this. You have between the first and the second node one item which is flowing. You have one element that is traveling between the first node and the second node. And the second node is returning two items. And this is really the particularity of N8N, is your workflow is able to manipulate list of items. It means that an infinite number of elements can travel from a node to another one, and that's very important. And you will see that it's offering a lot of flexibility and power, but you really need to understand that very clearly. So let's look at Google Sheet node here and see what's happening. In the input panel on the left, we see that we have one item represented here, an empty item. The first node just returns an empty item. So we see that the Google Sheet node returns two items. It's very clear if we look at the JSON tab here, what we receive two items. We receive an array of two items. N8N uses the JSON format to describe the information in your workflow. JSON is the most common way developers represent data. It's simple, it's structured, and easy for both humans and computers to read. When you inspect your nodes in N8N, both in the input and in the output, that you have the possibility to see the data in the JSON format. And in the output, you have the possibility to edit it. So that's very handy when you want to debug your workflow. Click on Edit here, and you see that you have here the raw JSON of the data output by this node. And it's very important that you understand how it works. First, JSON always starts with square brackets if you're dealing with a list of items. You can see that all the content here is wrapped into an open and a closed square brackets. This means that inside of it we have a list of items. Think of this as a box that holds multiple entries. Inside that box, each entry or item is wrapped in curly brackets. That's one object, like a row of data. Then inside those curly brackets, you have a key value pairs. The key, like name, email, message, ID, row number, whatever, it's always in quotes. It's followed by a column, which is separating the key from the value. The value can be a number, a text, a boolean, or other format, but if it's a text, it will be surrounded by quotes. Each key pair is separated by a comma. Items are also separated by comma, and you do not need to add a comma after the last key pair or the last item. Hey, if you like this content, if you think that it brings value and is helping you, please support my work, spread the word, hit the subscribe button, drop a like, drop a message. It will give me motivation to continue. In N8N, data flows automatically from one node to the next one. Here, I have a Google Sheet node that returns a list of items. Each item is like a row in a Google Sheet. And what we want to do now is to send one email per item. So we will add the Gmail node with the action send a message. In the input, we see that we have two items. We can look at them in the schema view, table view, or JSON view. What happens is that N8N will run the Gmail node once for each item in the list. That means that if the Google Sheet returns 5 rows, the Gmail node will run 5 times, 1 per row, using the data from each item. To use the data from each item, we can just drag and drop from the input pan to the center pan where we want to use, and boom, our data will be dynamically used by our node. We can do this for the recipient email, and for the message. For the title, we will just say hello. We can see that our fields are turned into expressions. They are not static or fixed. It means that we can use code in them. While building your workflow, you will often need to access data that are coming from previous node, not only from the very last node. Whatever it's a value from a previous Google Sheet node or an email address that you filtered or some text generated by an AI node, N8N makes it very easy to reach back and access exactly the data you need. So this very simple workflow is reading data from a Google Sheet, passing them to a Gmail send email node, and the Gmail node dynamically sends an email for each item it receives, getting from the item the email address and the body of the text. But what is static here is the subject. Here we do not have a dynamic subject, and we will change that right now. What we want to do is to set dynamically the title of the email at the beginning of our workflow. So we will add a new node between the trigger and the Google Sheet node, like this, and we will choose the set node. So we create a new field, we name it title, and we pass the title. When we have done that, we see that the Google Sheet node became yellowish. This is N8N warning us that there are some changes in the flow, and we can see that our workflow is partially green and partially gray. It means that we need to rerun it to have it work. So let's do it. And now we want to make the subject dynamic. So we empty the subject here, and we want to find in the schema tab, in the history of the nodes, we can drag and drop like that the title in the subject. And we see that it's hiding hello world from the edit fields item JSON title. Let me show you a super useful trick in N8N. When you're testing a workflow, you don't always want to rerun the previous nodes, especially if they pull data from an external service like Google Sheet or even a service that you pay like OpenAI. That's where pinning data helps. It freezes the output of a node so you can test the rest of the flow safely and quickly. For example, we have this workflow that we will run. It's reading data from Google Sheet and then sending email. I want to iterate on that workflow, but I don't want it to call Google Sheet every time because I know my data are not changing while I'm working. So I can go in the node and I see that I have in the output some data, and on the top right here we have the pin data. Here it becomes purple. The node here in the workflow is purple. It means that it has pin data. So every time we will run the workflow, you see that it's not executing this node. The data are stored in the workflow. If we change the content of the Google Sheet, which is read by the node, it will not be updated while the data are pinned. That's important to understand. If we do the same thing for the Gmail node here, every time we run the workflow, the Gmail node will not send any email. And that's very, very useful when you are building and crafting your workflow because you will want to test it over and over again. You can decide to unpin data at any moment, and you can rerun your workflow like before. Important to note is that pin data are not pinned in production. It means that you are running an active workflow. Those pin data are not taken into consideration. It's just when you are in the crafting process. Sometimes you only want to continue the workflow if a certain condition is met. For example, you might want to send a message only if the status is confirmed or process items scheduled on the current date. Adding conditions lets you filter your data and control what happens next in your workflow based on the value inside each item. Let's make this little workflow evolve. This workflow reads data from a Google Sheet, and for each line, it's sending an email. So it looks like this for the moment. email message, and we want to add a column send message that can be set to yes or no. So we don't necessarily need to send email to every line, and we can choose. To the workflow, we run the list friends node. We check that we have the send message yes, no, perfect. And between the sheet and the Gmail node, here we will add a if node. The if node lets us filters the item we want to send to the next node. So in this case, what we want to do is check the value of the send message. So we drag and drop the send message item here, and we see that the field has become an expression, and we want to check if it's equal to yes. We test the step, and we see that we have only one item in the true branch and one item in the false branch, which is exactly what we wanted. If we look at our workflow, we see that the if node is now sending one item to the Gmail node and one item to nowhere, and we could continue a second branch of the workflow based on the false branch here. Thank you for watching. This was the second chapter of the N8N Blacksmith training. Let's see you in the next one.